All right, hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to our next video lesson. This is part 4 of generating random numbers. We've already seen how to use srand and ctime. In our previous program, I showed how to generate a random number from 0 up to but not including a particular number, in this case the user's number. And then finally what I want to show you is how to generate numbers from a range. For example, let's say that we're throwing a cube with the numbers 1 through 6 in it. So I only want to generate numbers from 1 to 6. Or maybe I have another scenario where I want to generate numbers from a starting value to an ending value. So we're going to call that the lower bound and the upper bound. How would you do something like that? How would you create numbers in a given range? That's what we're going to do. So in this case, we still incorporate the IO stream. As you see over here, we're still including the C standard library in order for us to use the srand function. We're still using ctime in order to determine the number of seconds that have elapsed from January 1st, 1970. All right, so now let's go ahead and include some declarations. And specifically, I want the user number because we're going to ask them, enter a lower bound, enter an upper bound. Let's go ahead and create a counter. And so we'll say lower bound, which is the lowest number that they want to start off with. So if I said, hey, I'm going to be rolling a die, let's have the various numbers. So the lower bound would be 1, the upper bound would be 6. We're going to flip a coin. The lower bound would be 1, the upper bound would be 2, right, for heads or tails, say, for example. So that implies that we're going to have to create an upper bound number. Okay. Now, I am deliberately going to create an integer that is a random number. So I'm going to create random number, which is an integer. And if you have created a random number, I don't want you to create another random number. When I say, okay, create the next random number, I don't want it to be the same as the previous random number. So let's keep track of our random numbers. And if the newly generated random number is exactly the same as the previous one, give me a different random number, because I want it to be something unique. And so therefore, I better track what the previous random number is. We're going to ask this user if they want to do this over and over and over again. So we'll create a variable called try again. I'll set that to true. And then I'm going to have a character called user character that the user will enter Y for yes, I want to do this again, or any other character if they do not want to do this over and over again. All right, at this point, let's go ahead and get user input. But before I get the user input, perhaps what I should do is to establish a seeded random value. So you already know how to do that. That's just simply putting 0 inside of the argument for time. And so what this is going to do is to create a seeded random value anytime that I use the random function. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get the user input, and we're also going to perform a calculation again. So get random number and perform a calculation. The way that we'll do that is via a while statement, as long as try again is true. So in the previous example, I said try again, as long as that's equal to true. Here, I'm just going to simply rely on the fact that this is a Boolean value, and it's either going to be true or false. So I'll leave it like that. Let me ask the user to enter the lower bound integer. Let me get that and put that into the variable lower bound. Let me also ask them to do the same thing for the upper bound, and then I'll grab that as well. So we'll say cout, enter the upper bound integer. And let's put that into upper bound. So now that I have established the lower and the upper bound, I want to use that to create a random number from the lower to the upper bound. And we're going to place this into a variable called random number, which is what I created above, or what I declared above here. All right, so here we are. We're going to create a random number. Here is how you create a range of numbers, or a random number, I should say, within a range. So you're still going to use the rand function. You are going to modulus that with, okay, so now within parentheses, upper bound minus the lower bound plus 1. Okay, we're not finished yet. After that, get outside of the parentheses, and you are going to add the lower bound. So this is the equation that you use for determining a random number in between the upper and the lower bound. So this is just something that you write on your notes. If you wanted to, you could actually do the mathematical calculation to see how this works. This is going to be generating a random number that you mod with this, and then you add whatever the lower bound is. Okay. Now, I don't want to display back-to-back similar random numbers. So what I'll do is within a while statement, I'll say if the random number is equal to the previous number. So if the random number is the same thing as the previous number. If that's the case, then we need to generate a new random number. You'll notice what I've done over here. I've assigned previous number to 0. So the first time that I'm running this program, obviously the random number is going to be unique, so it will display it. But from the second, third, and so forth and so on, it may be that the random number is generated exactly the same. So I'll just simply take this code, copy and paste it. If you generated a new random number that's the same as the previous random number, give me a new random number. That's what this code does. All right, now that we've done this, I had better assign the previous number is going to be my newly created random number. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to see out. Yeah, let's see here. I'm going to see out a random number between, and then whatever that lower bound number is that the user entered, and then whatever the upper bound number is that was entered by the user is, and then whatever that random number is. We'll follow that with a period and 2 end-del statements so that I have a blank line in between. I see that I made a mistake over here. What I meant to do is this while statement is just going to be for this right here. So let me do this. I'm going to take that away, and I'm going to put a curly bracket right here. I just want to repeat this if I have not generated a new unique random number. These guys don't have to be indented, so I can move that back over here. So go ahead and make that correction. We're just going to execute this over and over again based on a random number that is new and unique. All right, so now that I've done that, let's ask the user if they want to do this again. So we'll say try again. We'll ask the user to enter yes or no. We're going to get that value and put it into the user character. And so if the user character is either a lowercase y, or if the user character is an uppercase y. If that's true, try again is going to be set to true or assigned to true. Otherwise, try again is going to be assigned false. Finally, when I'm all done, let's go ahead and send an end-del statement to go to the beginning of the next line. Save my work. Okay, so just to recap, this is the equation that you use for determining a random number between two values that have already been provided. We call that the lower bound, we call that the upper bound. By subtracting those two, adding 1, and then taking that value, you're going to say random modulus, whatever that value is. When this generates a number, you add to it the lower bound. That way you can get a number from this lower bound to that upper bound. We want to make sure that we do not generate a number that's just been created, so we may need to generate a brand new random number if they're the same, so this thing will just keep on looping it over and over again. And then of course I have to keep track of that new previous number, which is my new random number, and then I display the results to the user. So let me save my work and run the program. I'm going to reduce the font size so that you can see the code. So we'll say properties, 16 font. I'll move this over here so that you can see the code down here. All right, enter a lower bound, 1. Enter an upper bound, 6. Okay, so a random number between 1 and 6 is 4. Try again? Sure. How about 1 and 6? All right, so now it gave me a 2. Yes. How about 1 and 6? This time it gave me a 1. So in other words, it gave me a number that is part of my lower bound. Yeah, I want to try it again. 1 and 6. Okay, so this time it gave me a 6, which is the number, which is the upper bound number. And if I keep on doing this over and over again, you'll see that it's going to give you random numbers from 1 to 6. Now, if you look at your execution of the code, yours should be different than mine. Mine came up with a 4, then a 2, then a 1, and a 6, and so forth and so on. Your execution should be different than mine. So the idea is, let me go back over here and end the program. So do you want to do this again? No, I do not. This is how you generate a number from a lower bound to an upper bound. All right, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.